Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to be answering a deceptively simple question. Which game genre does Superman work best in? I believe it's a very complex question, mainly because Superman is all-powerful. Or at the very least, he's in the upper echelon of strength in the DC universe. Therefore, most people can't really challenge him. In other superhero games like Batman Arkham Asylum, there's a challenge because Batman needs to actually fight his way through complex and hard villains. But Superman is harder because he doesn't really have that difficulty, or you'd think. I've read many Superman comic books, and this argument for me has made no sense actually. Mainly because in most Superman media, he does fight complex villains. Your Brainiacs, your Metallicos, your whatever else. So you can actually make him fight really hard villains. But at his core, what makes Superman so great is not just his strength, but his morals. For the most part, the core of every single Superman comic book is about how he's trying to find the morality within his challenge. And I believe that's why Lex is a great villain for him. But let's actually explore what the game genres could actually be used here. I'll go over 4, I'll explain why I use them, and then explain why I think they would work. And then rank them. So let's begin. The first is obvious, a hack and slash or a beat 'em up. In these games, the point is to be the strongest guy ever, to beat up hordes of villains pretty easily. But there still is some challenge, obviously. You still fight some bosses who are challenging. So perhaps you can make a Superman video game where it's a hack and slash that Clark needs to fight his way through Metropolis to go defeat the bad guy, whoever it is. The main goons would be perhaps robots or someone simple for him, and then the bosses would be someone a lot more complex. So again, maybe Lex Luthor or Bizarro, something like that. I do believe that this method could work, but there are many issues. Mainly that I don't think that this genre perfectly encapsulates Superman's character in the right way, or would be conductive to tell the right Superman story. Clark is strong, but I wouldn't say he's a fighter at heart. Additionally, I believe playing a game where you only beat up small goons would get boring really fast, especially if those goons can't beat you up either. So for that, I'll put it at a 5 out of 10. It's okay. The next 2 are interesting because I think they work in a similar sphere, but not in the same way. The second is Souls-likes. We've all played them. Souls-likes are games where you play at first weak protagonist fighting against eldritch beings of immense power. And the main way you get stronger is by, yes, getting better equipment, but overall, it's about gaining more experience in the game itself. So learning how to dodge, to evade, to parry, stuff like that. This genre works a bit better. Imagine a game where you play as Superman and you have all of his powers. The way you use them are not as intuitive as they can be. Laser beam, super strength, those things are hard. And you spend most of the game fighting other extremely powerful villains. And the main way you get stronger is by actually learning how to play the game better. So yes, I do envision that you would be gaining new equipment and new powers, but the main gameplay loop would be about learning how to use your body in a more efficient way. There are many stories here you could use. Metropolis won't do it. That's why I think the best setting would be War World. So if you don't know, in War World, Superman lost his powers and had to fight in a gladiatorial match against other people to survive. It's similar to World War Hulk, but it's held captive by Mongol. So in this setting, Clark needs to use his fists, swords, whatever else to survive. And as you progress, you can get stronger by getting your powers back. This actually goes hand in hand with the third one, that being Metroidvanias. A genre where you're by yourself, you need to explore a massive enclosed area to gain experience, fight bosses, gain better equipment, and then beat the boss. At its core, I think the loop would be similar here too. You're on War World, you lost all your powers. Let's say you're stuck in a stadium or a city, and Clark needs to defeat other people to gain his powers back. And in both genres, the final big bad would be Mongol. When you compare both genres, they both work, but there is one main difference that makes one better than the other, in my opinion. That being open worlds. On World World, yes, Superman is a captive, but he can also explore the planet if he wants. So I'm not sure how a Metroidvania would work to keep him in a small contained area. So for the setting and the vibes, I think the best genre for this specific story would actually be Souls-like. So for both, I'll give Souls-like a 8 out of 10, and I'll give Metroidvania a 7. Now we can go to the last and potentially the most interesting, RPGs. And no, in my idea, Clark isn't depowered. So how would an RPG game where Clark is as powerful as he is work in a setting like Metropolis? To explain this, we need to go back to another game, Undertale. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's very popular. And Undertale is a pretty normal RPG, except for one simple difference: morality. The way in which the protagonist interacts with the world greatly changes how the game plays out. So if you're more peaceful, as in you don't kill anyone, then the game plays out pretty peacefully. But if you go full murderer, the world will actually interact back and respond to your actions. This specific aspect, let's call it the morality choice, would work really well with Superman. Like I said, what makes him very interesting is that at the core of his stories is a question about morality and whether or not he's doing the right thing. So I believe a game where you are all powerful, but depending on how you use that power, it affects how the game plays out, would be exceptional. So for example, let's take a very specific storyline. Let's pick What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, or the movie name, Superman vs. the Elite. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to, it's really good. But at its core, it's a moral dilemma. The question being, how far can superheroes go when it comes to saving others? For example, is murder and control okay? And in this story, Clark fights a group of people who believe in extremes. That being that they're in the right to kill anyone who gets in the way of world peace. Of course, Clark is against this. So let's take this storyline and implement a bit of Undertale's morality inside. Imagine a game where you are Superman, you are super strong, super fast, all of it, and the game itself is pretty simple. Defeat the elite. That is the main premise. But of course, there are many ways to do so. You can fight other people, depending on how you either spare them or kill them, will change how the game ends up playing out in the end. There is no right or wrong ending, but there are very different ones. So you could spare the elite, you could kill them, you can work together. It'll be complex, but it's still an RPG at the end of the day. I would imagine that in this game, you can talk to others and deepen your bond with them, kind of like Persona. And of course, again, depending on how you end up playing the game, your bond will change. It could be a more straightforward RPG, so like turn-based, or it could be something a lot more freeing, so more of an action RPG, similar to the Final Fantasy VII remakes. So you're already pretty strong, but you can get even stronger if you want, and gain new tools, weapons, etc. And you have to use every single tool you have, whether it be your bonds or your weapons, to reach the ending. I like this idea a lot. Could be some changes here and there. Overall, it works because it implements the core ideas of Superman pretty well. So for that, I'll put it at a 9 out of 10. And yeah, that's everything. What do you think? If you have your own ideas, let me know in the comments. See you next time. Peace.